4,300 years ago, a king did something no human being had ever done before. He took dozens of independent, often warring city-states and welded them into one empire, the first empire on Earth. For a century and a half, his dynasty ruled an empire so vast it took messengers weeks to cross it. Then, the rain stopped. Not for a season, not for a decade, for nearly 300 years. And the empire that had conquered every army it faced could not survive the sky. Welcome back to Human Past History. Last episode, we covered how a handful of survivors made it through an ice age that nearly ended our species. Today, we're going thousands of years forward to the world's first empire and the climate disaster that brought it down. This is the story of Akkad. Around 2334 BCE, southern Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, wasn't one country. It was a patchwork of fiercely independent city-states: Ur, Uruk, Kish, Lagash. Each had its own king, its own gods, its own army. For 1,000 years, they'd fought each other for water rights, farmland, and trade routes. Then came Sargon. According to later Mesopotamian legend, he began as a cupbearer to the king of Kish, not royalty, not born to rule. But Sargon built an army, and city by city, he did what no one in the region had ever managed. He conquered them all, and kept them conquered. He didn't just defeat his rivals, he restructured how they were ruled. Sargon installed his own loyal officials as regional governors instead of leaving local kings in charge. He standardized weights, measures, and even the official language of administration, Akkadian, across a territory that stretched from the Persian Gulf up through northern Syria. Historians consider this the first true empire in the historical record, not just a kingdom that had conquered land, but a centralized, administered, multi-ethnic state. Sargon ruled for an estimated 56 years. By the time he died, Akkad wasn't just a city anymore, it was an idea. The empire reached its greatest size under Sargon's grandson, Naram-Sin, about a century later. Naram-Sin pushed Akkadian control farther than it had ever gone, north into the mountains of Anatolia, east toward Iran, and along trade routes that connected Mesopotamia to distant lands. He also did something unprecedented. He declared himself a living god. Earlier Mesopotamian kings had claimed to rule on behalf of the gods. Naram-Sin had himself depicted wearing the horned crown, a symbol reserved for deities, and inscriptions referred to him as God of Akkad. It was a statement of supreme confidence. The empire, in his telling, wasn't just powerful, it was divinely invincible. This was also a golden age for Akkadian culture. One of the most remarkable figures of the era wasn't a soldier at all. It was a woman named Enheduanna, daughter of Sargon, appointed as high priestess in the city of Ur. Enheduanna composed hymns and poetry that survive on clay tablets today, and many historians credit her as the earliest named author in human history, male or female, anywhere in the world. For a moment, Akkad looked unstoppable. A god-king on the throne, a celebrated poet in the temple, and an empire larger than anything the region had ever seen. But empires built fast often have weaknesses built in just as fast. Akkad's power came from joining two very different regions. The irrigated farmland of southern Mesopotamia, fed reliably by river canals, and the rain-fed farmland of the north, which depended entirely on seasonal rainfall to grow grain. As long as the rain came, this arrangement worked beautifully. The north fed the empire's frontier garrisons and growing cities. The south anchored its political and religious capital. It was a system with no backup plan. And under Naram-Sin's successors, signs of strain were already showing. Rebellions in the provinces, harder fights to hold distant territory, a treasury stretched by constant campaigning. All it would take was for one part of that system to fail. Around 2200 BCE, something happened across an enormous stretch of the ancient world. Climate scientists call it the 4.2 kiloyear event, a sudden, severe shift toward dryness that affected the Near East, the Eastern Mediterranean, and parts of South Asia, in some places for a century or more. The clearest evidence comes from a site called Tel Leilan in what's now northeastern Syria, once a thriving Akkadian provincial city. Archaeologists excavating the site found something eerie. After centuries of continuous building and rebuilding, construction simply stopped. Layers of wind-blown dust and sand, with no trace of human activity, sat directly on top of the city's final occupation layer. Animal remains from the period show livestock that died emaciated, a telltale sign of sustained drought, not a single bad harvest. Researchers estimate that as many as 28,000 people abandoned Tel Leilan and the surrounding region, fleeing toward areas that still had water. Nearby Tel Brak, once a major Akkadian center, shrank by roughly 3/4. For an empire that depended on the rain-fed north to feed its garrisons and cities, this wasn't a regional inconvenience. It was the failure of an entire support system, lasting not years, but generations. And the timing is almost impossible to ignore. This same climate event has been linked by researchers to the decline of Old Kingdom Egypt and major disruption in the Indus Valley civilization, on the opposite side of the ancient world, at roughly the same time. 3 of the earliest great civilizations on Earth destabilized by the same shift in the planet's weather. As grain stopped flowing from the north, the Akkadian state's grip on its provinces weakened fast. Garrisons that depended on regular supply lines were cut off. Local governors, no longer receiving support or orders from the center, began acting on their own. Groups from the surrounding hill country, remembered in later texts as the Guchians, moved into the power vacuum. By around 2150 BCE, Akkadian central authority had effectively collapsed. The dynasty that Sargon founded did not end in one dramatic battle. It dissolved, province by province, harvest by failed harvest. And here's the detail that still unsettles archaeologists today. We have never found the city of Akkad itself. The capital of the world's first empire, the city Sargon ruled from, the city Naram-Sin called himself a god in, has never been located. Its name appears constantly in ancient records. Its physical location remains lost. The Akkadian Empire is, in many ways, the first cautionary tale in recorded history. It shows that even the most advanced administrative system of its time, standardized law, organized taxation, a multi-ethnic government holding together dozens of former rivals, could not outlast a multi-generational failure of rainfall. It's a pattern that would repeat again and again across history, in civilizations that depended on systems that assumed the climate of the past would simply continue. Akkad just happened to be the first empire ever built, which makes it the first to learn, the hard way, what happens when the ground beneath an empire's food supply quietly changes. If you enjoyed this one, you'll probably love our last episode on the Ice Age survivors who became the ancestors of nearly everyone alive today. Links in the description. Follow Human Past History for more true stories the textbooks left out. See you in the next one.